Justice Education. I just wanted to read out a list of sponsors for this series this semester that we're really grateful for and helped make this possible. So we have the Center for Advanced Study, the Center for Global Studies and U.S. Department of Education Title VI Grant, the Channing Murray Foundation, Department of African American Studies, First Mennonite Church of Champaign-Urbana, the Humanities Research Institute, Office of the Provost, School of Social Work, Social Action Council of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign, the Women and Gender and Global Perspectives Program, Department of Urban and Regional Planning, and then the Student Cultural Programming fee through the university. The only other thing I wanted to point out before we get started is there are some papers and pens around the room, hopefully one right in front of you. Those are just quick evaluation forms that help us continue to improve this program each week. So at the end of this, please take a minute just to fill that out for us. It really does help us. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jim now to get us going.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Jim Hinterlong. I'm the Executive Director here at the University YMCA. It's really my great privilege to welcome all of you here on Founders Day. So I want to take you back. February 3rd, 1873, a group got together and decided to establish at Illinois Industrial University, this university, 5 years after its founding, decided to create a YMCA, by and for students. The whole idea was to create a place where students could grow, where they could engage in fellowship, where they could learn to work and learn to serve. And that's a pretty extraordinary legacy for this organization. We're now the oldest Campus Y in the country. We're one of the few remaining Campus Ys. And what has always struck me in the 35 years I've been associated with this organization, I came here as a student in 1988, is just how long and what a significant role the University Y plays in the lives of individuals. And so first of all, I'd like to say, if you are a former staff member of the University Y, either current or past, if you would just raise your hand. We have some longtime staff members here. We're going to have a gathering of the staff afterward. That should be a lot of fun. Today's panel is actually going to be, we've titled it Voices from the Center. And part of the reason we said that is because the original vision for the University Y was to be a center in the lives of students and faculty and in the community. And I think it's a far better thing than putting up a PowerPoint presentation to hear stories from individuals who have been here at the Y in significant leadership roles. And we have 4 individuals today. We have Mike Doyle, who was an executive director here from, I got to get it right, 2009 until 2020. I took over from Mike. John Jordan on this end, who came in 1990 and then left in 1999 as the executive director. Cassie Carroll, who was, this is quite fascinating. If you're a student, think about what this means. Cassie was a student here, very involved in student programs, became president of the student board, became president of the board of governors, which is our operating board, and is now on the board of trustees, which is our endowment board. So Cassie has quite a history with us. And then Becca Guyette, who was involved with programs here, came in and became the program director, and in that role then moved on and became the development director. Becca now works for the United Way, but Becca has also stayed engaged with us as a trustee of the board of trustees. There's so much more to say about these individuals, but they're storytellers, and that's the purpose of today. I'll let them tell their story. I'm going to introduce Scott in a moment. Scott Peters on the screen. Scott was the program director when I was a student here. Scott began with the Y in 1984 here, and is now a professor at Cornell. And Scott, I just have to say on a personal note, Scott had just a tremendous impact on my life and the trajectory of my life. And I owe Scott just an enormous debt of gratitude. Scott is now also on our trustees. And Scott is, we're going to try this today. Scott's going to be facilitating the conversation. But just to kind of center us in how the Y is part of people's life histories and stories, I counted up the years of affiliation for all of the staff currently at the Y. And if you take all Guyette of the number of years we've all been affiliated with the Y. It is 68 years. That's the current staff, have a collective experience with the Y of 68 years. These 4 individuals, you guys want to take a guess? 125 years of experience with the University of Y. 125 years of collective experience. And then I would be remiss if I didn't point out one special person in the audience, Walt McMahon. Walt, can you raise your hand back here, please? I was asking Walt today, Walt is on our board of trustees. He has been just such a generous supporter of the Y in so many ways. Walt came to the University of Illinois as an assistant professor in 1957 and was involved with the Y. And I said, Walt, when did your experience with campus YMCAs begin? And Walt's experience began in 1940. 1940, 83 years. 1950, Walt, did I get it wrong? 1950. So 73 years of involvement with the campus Ys. So this is a wonderful place. If you're not part of our story right now, we hope that you'll become so. There's a lot happening here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Peters to kick off today's panel discussion and conversation. Thanks, Scott, for being here.
I wish I could be there with you today. It's great to see some old friends. I want to offer just a brief framing for the session today, and then we'll jump right in. The advantage you have with me being on Zoom as the facilitator is you can just push the mute button anytime you want. This is taking out of the conversation. A few days after I handed in my dissertation for my PhD, for some reason I packed my car up and I drove to Champaign, Urbana. And thanks to John Jordan and a team of folks who were supportive of the idea, I spent 3 months immersing myself in the archives to write a new history of the University of YMCA. I still remember that period with fondness, especially the great support that John, you lent to me, and the excitement that both of us had as I was discovering things and bringing them to your office and saying, John, you've got to take a look at this. You know, it really does. It was a great experience. One of the things I learned from that history, that historical research, is that the entire history of the Y can be understood in one way as a kind of navigation of 2 different tensions. The first tension is a tension between the attention to ourselves as individuals, our person, our spirit, our soul, and the attention we have to each other, to community, to the public world. So there's been a long tension in this institution with respect to its mission and work of how it plays the tension between focusing on the person, the individual, and focusing on the community and the public world. The second tension that's been through the whole history is one that is between what the YMCA is. It was founded in 1873, the University of Y was founded in 1873, as many other Ys were, as a movement. It was a movement of volunteers who came together to pursue a mission. By the early 20th century, it had become an institution with gigantic buildings and big staffs and big budgets. So there became a tension between the identity. Is it an institution or is it a movement? In my work, what I found was that there were 3 periods you could mark on. The early period from 1873 to 1916, most of that period was attending to the person, the individual. The mission was very much about the individual spirit, very centered on religious faith. But by the end of that period, many of you there know, because it's about to be torn down, the Y had built a gigantic building on Wright Street that just about took the organization down because of the amount of grief that came with trying to manage the building. Those of you who've been directors of the Y and in charge of managing the building you're sitting in understand that obligation. And if you look at that building down the street that's going to be torn down and you think about what was going on in there, I'm sure you were glad that we weren't running that building. So that was the early period. The middle period was really marked by an executive director, Henry Wilson, who served for 30 years as the director. And it was during that period, during the Great Depression, when the building you're sitting in was built. That period was very much also marked by an attention to the person, the individual. Henry Wilson talked about the organization as a partnership and a spiritual undertaking. He very much supported the movement view of the organization and was always spurring volunteers to take over its control. Then the most recent period when I was writing the book was 1958 to 1997. And that was really 3 periods in one. At the beginning you had a retreat at Allerton Park that Ed Nestigen had a very significant role in running, in which the organization gained a sense of itself as an intellectual religious center. It embraced religious pluralism, which was a very radical move for this organization, coming out of its identity as a Christian organization. And then that period moved into a period of community volunteerism, and then the period that I was present in, and I was on the staff for, a period that was marked by attention to social action and social justice. You know, the real heart and soul of the organization and its history have to do with the people. And the things people experienced, and the things people did, and the things people said. So we've had 25 years since that book came out that I worked on with John. And what we wanted today's panel to do is to give a chance for people who've been deeply involved in the life and work of the organization over the past 25 years to share some stories about their experience that will help us get our hands around kind of the question of, what was the power and value of this organization during the past 25 years? What made it valuable and powerful? So I'm asking each of you on the panel to share a story about a moment that you have never been able to forget. Something that happened that had to do with your engagement with this organization, that was imprinted in you, that you still carry with you, that you think somehow represents what this organization means to you. And I'm going to start this off by sharing one very brief moment with you as a kind of example that might help you think of other moments from your experience. There's one moment I have never forgotten, which to me helps me understand the organization's value and power during the time that I was on staff. It was in January. I don't remember what year. Actually, some people in the room, including Jim, might remember the year. But I was sitting in my office with Maria Stone, and we were reading the New York Times, which we always did in the morning, drinking our coffee, sitting in the office. And there was an article on the front page of the New York Times about Memphis, Tennessee. And the article was about how in a McDonald's in Memphis, Tennessee, there was a placemat that was put on all of the tables. And on Martin Luther King's birthday, what it said on that date was National Nothing Day. I showed the article to Maria, and she started crying. And by the end of the day, by the end of that same day, she had organized alternative spring break. I have never forgotten that moment. I hold it in my admiration for Maria and her spirit. I hold it as a kick in my rear end for myself when I feel like I'm getting too lazy. But that story to me represents kind of that social action and justice flavor of the spirit of the time that I was on the staff. That's how it happened, that's how it worked. It was people like Maria stepping up and doing something. So that's an example of a moment. We all have many moments to tell and many stories to tell about those moments. So we want to get our hands around what was the last 25 years? What was this organization's contribution to people's lives and growth and to the university, to the community? What's a moment, what's a story you can tell about a moment that you think represents that? And I would like to, I can't see you now, I can only see whoever have a story to tell, then.
All right, I'll start, Scott, with a moment which was actually before I even worked here. I was looking for a job that was just going to be just a job for a year. And in the Daily Illini, there was a posting that was about this big, which I now know is because Betty Earl thought they charged too much. And she would put as few lines as possible when we had ads in the Daily Illini. And so it was an ad for a program director position. I was just doing grad school across the street at Lincoln Hall. And so I said, well, I love student affairs. I did a lot of student affairs work as an undergrad and was doing a little bit in grad school. I'll apply for this job until my then boyfriend, now husband, was finishing up law school. And so I got all my stuff together. I didn't know anybody. I had never stepped foot in this building. My peers used to get Thai food, and I would say, oh, I don't think I like that, which is hilarious to anyone who knows me now. I can't stay away from it. So I walked over, and I went to the front desk to turn everything in. I had everything in a nice manila envelope, and in lumbers this 6'8" giant to the front desk, and he said, hello, can I help you with something? And I said, I'm actually applying for the program director position. And he said, my name is Steve Shoemaker. I would be your boss if you got this job. And there's a program that's about to start in Latzer Hall called Know Your University. Do you know your university? And I said, I think so. And he said, well, come sit with me, because if you get this job, you'll be running this program. And it wasn't really in question, it was more of a command. So I came and sat with him and watched the program. In the course of the hour, really the 15 minutes leading up to it starting, I met a host of individuals that Steve introduced me to. Oh, this is a young woman, Becca Nieto at the time. She's going to be applying to be our program director. And, people were, oh, nice to meet you. And I left here wanting this job so badly because I was struck by the people and how kind everyone was and how welcoming everyone was. And the thing that still to this day strikes me about the Y is we have this tremendous institution with deep, deep history. When you look at someone like Walt, right, and who has just decades and decades of history. But someone new can come in and is welcomed with the same level of energy and excitement and warmth, and it makes you fall in love with the place. And, I did get the job, and by the end of that summer, so 3 months later, it was time for my now fiance to start looking for a job, and I said, you're going to have to limit your search to Champaign-Urbana. And he said, no offense, but your nonprofit career is probably not going to be what determines where we land. And I said, I love this place. I'm not leaving this organization. And, I just think that's the essence of the Y so much for my experience here, because so much of it has been wrapped in the people who love it. It really just, that first day was a shining example of who we are as an organization.
Why don't you go, I'll go back.
Thank you. I had similar, being a student, starting as a student at the Y and now being involved in so many different facets of the organization, my journey and reflections are similar to Becca's in the sense of warmth. I came to the Y as an environmental science student, really excited to dig in and learn about ways that I could be more active in the community, in the region, get more involved. And I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what my path was. I wasn't really sure at the time, I think freshman, sophomore year, really what I wanted to do with that. I just know I loved the environment, I loved the experiences I had with it, and I wanted to do something about it. So, coming to the Y and being able to not only have the opportunity to join a student group, Students for Environmental Concerns, that really, provided a connection to a whole host of passionate students, but also knowing that I could do something. I could step in and learn how to be active in my student community, which for me, that was really exciting. I'm a doer. I like to think of big ideas, but I like to get my hands dirty and actually do stuff. So for me, it was an amazing opportunity to gain skills to actually figure out how to accomplish my goals in life and in the future. So being a part of things like the student sustainability fee, looking for renewable energy, a wind turbine on campus, knowing that this place has an audience not only on campus but in the community was something that was really shocking and exciting to me. That connection, because that connection is so often lost. Like Becca, you said, this institution is huge, but the connections to the community sometimes are sparse. And so this university-wide really merges and blends the community and the university together in so many ways. And my reflection and moment was I was doing at KYU, Know Your University, and I was talking about a recycling initiative that I was doing on campus. I was trying to figure out why there wasn't multifamily recycling for apartment buildings. There was multifamily recycling options for homeowners and single families, but of course campus produces a lot of recycling and trash. So through Students for Environmental Concerns, we started community organized recycling efforts to focus on this. And I remember presenting it at Know Your University, and one of the community members, after I presented about this issue, raised their hand and said, "But wait, I have this at my house. I don't understand what the problem is." I said, "Well, we don't have it I don't have it at my apartment building. There's hundreds of apartment buildings on this campus, hundreds of homes that are multifamily units. That's the issue." And they're like, "Wow, I didn't know that. I want to help." So having that bridge led us to a presentation at the City of Champaign City Council to be able to present some of our research and findings from the work that we did. So not only was I able to really make a difference here on campus, but we drove that through to the community, and now there's a mixed recycling multifamily program in Champaign. And I'm not the only one responsible, and I'm not taking full credit for it. But for me, it was just a reflection of how supportive the staff were to help me and the people that I was working with navigate how to do this, building those connections between the campus and the university, and being able to really have the support as a student to see something like that to fruition and actually have it make an impact. I mean, that's what the power of the Y is they care, the staff and volunteers, they care about what students do. They care about how students see the world, and they want to empower students to really make a change in the world or act on what they see in the world. And I mean, that's why I'm still part of the organization. From that moment, it's been so powerful for me, and really want to continue to inspire that action across the university-wide to follow suit and continue that work.
Can people hear me? No, I should have this. This isn't it. Use the microphone. All right. For me, you're going to hear a lot of familiar themes from both Becca and Cassie. When I came here, one of the things that fascinated me, I read that book the weekend before I went for my job interview here to the Y. And one of the things that amazed me about it, which was the history of the first 150 years, was how, the evolution of the program. Scott referenced it, that it started out as Bible study and connecting students to Bible study and in the community. And over the years, it's evolved. There was efforts in the 50s around civil rights. There was anti-war stuff in the late 60s, environmentalism, and it just seemed that it just evolved and reflected the issues and concerns and passions of students of that time. And when I came here, I had no background in immigration, but when I look back at one of the major program growths that happened during my time at the Y was the growth of the New American Welcome Center and the work that this organization was doing around immigration. I think Becca had been involved in the Hispanic Latino Partnership before I came, but really it was in the fall of 2009, soon after I began, one of our student organizations, Amnesty International, was working with a group out of La Casa, La Colectiva, and they were organizing rallies on campus around immigration reform and the DREAM Act. And I remember, for me, the moment that I'll always remember was that spring of 2010, And Jesse Hoyt, who was a student leader at La Colectiva, came into my office to talk about joining the Y and how the Y can support their work. And one of the things he said to me was, he says, we're doing these great rallies and we're having a great time on campus and everyone's starting out and everyone's supportive of us, but it's like a bubble. We don't feel like we're connected to the people who we care about, the reason we're doing this work, the immigrant families back home that we come from. We just feel like here we are on campus rallying the choir. And so we began to talk about, well, how do we begin to break that? And I remember the summer of 2010, Jesse, Celeste Larkin, Irikere Pison, they came up with a list of people who we wanted to talk to. They went out and did interviews with them. Probably over about 2 or 3 months, interviewed 30 or 40 people and began to talk to them about what were their concerns, what were the issues they were seeing in the community, what were their programs, what were they trying to address, who did they work with. And we would meet every week after they would go out and have these meetings and come back and they report who they met with and what they learned, who else they were going to go out and talk to, who else someone suggested that they get to know. And at the end of this process, they said, well, we want to pull everyone together because a lot of people don't know what other people in the community are doing. And they had a meeting down in the K room, I remember it, and about 35 people showed up, all working on immigration in our community, all concerned about the issues that were going on in the community. And that was the first meeting of the CU Immigration Forum, which was sort of the kickoff of the work that we began doing. Soon there was an effort around secure communities, the DACA reform came in, and over the next 6 years, I remember Carroll Ammons worked over at the YMCA, and she helped get us a VISTA slot, and a young man named Aaron Johnson Ortiz came to work here as a VISTA. And all of a sudden, the programs really started picking up and taking off. The students were doing all kinds of things in the community. And over that 6 years, I got to see this thing sort of take off. And I remember the day after the election, we had a board meeting of 2016, and Donald Trump had just been elected. And the the YUSA called me up that afternoon and said, we got a grant to have 10 New American Welcome Centers around the country, and we want to pick your organization as one of them to sort of try this out and see if we can build this model out. And from there, we hired Gloria and all the work that's been happening over the last 6 years since then. But it all really started with those students who wanted to do something, wanted to take what they were passionate about, what they cared about, and bring the work to the community. And we were able to do that with them. And I think the things that stand out to me was the fact that the students were driving it, that it was their issue, what they were passionate about, that they were also connecting with the community in ways, and that this offered a place for coming together. So it wasn't just the students, but a place where they could come together with people, where they could collaborate, where they could share resources and get support for the work that they were doing, much like Cassie had that. And it really just blossomed out of all that. And, really without any prior experience, and I got to see and got very involved in that. And so that's always stuck with me, how that sort of grew out of nowhere. And it always struck with me that it's sort of the DNA of the organization, that somehow it's able to provide space and allow the opportunity for students to come together, pursue their passion, and to make a difference in the world, not just here on campus, but in the community overall. So for me, it's always been very inspirational to be connected to the organization.
Well, it's hard to know where to start. It's interesting that in this panel, including Scott, we say the 5 of us, 2 of us, Mike and I, came here after a lifetime of work, but this was what we had always been looking for. And so we came at the end of our careers and spent our last working years, officially working years here. But it wasn't that easy, and Mike had certain advantages because he'd been in the community. I came from outside. I was an Illinois boy, grew up on a farm in northern Illinois, but I'd gone off to the coasts. My first job was at Berkeley, California in the 1960s, where things were pretty lively, and we were trying to deal with issues, and there was a campus Y there called Stiles Hall, which focused on issues of civil rights and civil liberties. And they were noted all over the country for those kinds of things, just like this Y has been noted all over the country as one of the premier campus YMCAs to serve and change their university community. So I came here to interview thinking this could be just the right place for me, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't know anything about the Y, because I had no background in the Y. And the young man, John Thompson, who was the president and interviewing me and negotiating with me to come, said, John, he said, your background is perfect to come here and help lead this Y. But I knew they were in financial trouble, and they talked to me about that. And I knew that I would have to do a lot of administrative work and fundraising work. And so I wasn't sure that's what I really wanted to come and do, although I was fascinated by everything I saw and by everybody I met. And so finally John said to me, I said to John, well, what is it that you think is most important for me to do here? And he said, we want you to articulate the mission in everything you do, whether it's program development or fundraising or staff development or public relations in some other way. Articulate the mission. So I had to go learn what the mission was. I could see the paper. But I went to some executive training, like Mike had to do too when he came, because the YMCA has training for their leadership, and especially for the executives that are supposedly in charge of the whole thing. But we had to learn how to bring staff together, how to develop boards, how to do fundraising and public relations. And so I went to various seminars, but the best seminar I went to was the one on the history of the Y. And I'm going to pick up on a couple things Scott said and push it back a bit further and then come forward and hopefully focus on the future. The YMCA as a movement, and by the way, almost everything I say about the YMCA would apply to the YWCA as a separate movement for women, obviously, for many, many decades before they began to join together in activity. The YMCA was founded in England in 1844 because of migration. The rural people to the cities, the rural people to the factories, the farming people to the factories. There was a migration within England and all of Europe during the Industrial Revolution. And in 1844, the Protestant churches of England, through their lay leadership, not their clergy, said, we've got to follow our young people from where we've grown up to where they are going to live their lives. And they may be destroyed in this urban industrial society. Think of Charles Dickens. He wrote about that society. That's where the YMCA was born. And they followed their young people to the cities, and they provided gymnasiums and chapels and single-room occupancy hotels to protect these young people when they went into the city. Now, in the 20th century, the Protestant churches of America thought they had to follow their students to the state universities because there was no religion taught or practiced, maybe, at the state universities. But the YMCA was already there, because Scott told you about our history here. But the first YMCAs in the United States were at the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan in 1858, before the Civil War. You've got to think of the YMCA's history as responding to social crisis and social change and tremendous demands upon people, especially young people, moving from one place to another. Now, of course, it can be international and every other kind of movement. But in those days, it was within each society, they were moving to a strange and dangerous place from somebody's point of view. So that's the history. But then let's pick up on the two buildings that Scott referred to. The University YMCA was here from 1873 to 1900 and began to have its own space, but there was no dormitory, no student residence provided by the university. So Illini Hall became the first men's dormitory for 88 students. And the YMCA thought this was their contribution because they were creating a model, to create a model for how the university should be. But after 10 years, this working with a dormitory exhausted the YMCA staff because all their time was being put into that energy. So Scott explained, they moved on, and that building, however, moved on and became the first Illini union. So it's interesting how the Y, even its legacy to the university, was a creative one. So then this building had to be built, but they couldn't raise money during the Depression. I'm telling you these things because you've maybe studied or heard about these things from your family or from your studies, how institutions develop. As he said, it was a movement that became an institution. And this building is not a dormitory. There's a few residents on the top floor that have helped manage the building and so on. But this building is a workshop. You know, there's a brand new term now, and I was just hearing from my alma mater representative about a term called makespace. Colleges are trying to create places where students and faculty together can create new ideas, new forms, new collaborations. Well, friends, the YMCA has been in the makespace business ever since it started. And it did that first from a religious perspective, and then it did it from a social justice or social service perspective. And so when I had to do this interview and I signed up for this whole thing, I had to learn all this. Now you all maybe know all this, or you want to know more than just this. But I wanted to put this framework and these surges of development right up to the present moment. The Y continues to be a makespace for the University of Illinois.
So thank you all for, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for the stories. Becca, I love the Steve Shoemaker story. That's just a fabulous story. And those are the kinds of stories that bring this whole thing to life. That is the life of this organization. We only have 13 more minutes or so here. One of the things that stories often do is that they prompt other stories. So I want to give a chance for people to share another story that maybe the stories you just heard prompted for you. And we can open it up to the audience here. And I'm especially interested in Betty, who I know is in the audience. And Betty, we did a conversation where I mentioned I was going to call you out. And I know you have many stories to tell of experiences you've had. And many of the stories are very, very small stories of two people talking. But those stories, Mike's story was just, in a sense, about two people talking and what that led to, what that opened up. So the small leads to the big. Betty, do you have a story to share?
Oh, I could probably tell a few stories. You know, when I came here not looking at social justice, to me it was a position of what my background was. It was in accounting, and I also had done building management before. So that, you know, that's what brought me here. And I came in the summertime and students are not here. So quiet. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to stay here. 24 years later, I retired. And but when the students came back, the excitement in this building and finding out the excitement that the students had for their programs and them coming in and just sitting and talking to me, you know, I'm like, gosh, I have to be nice to them, you know. But it was such a pleasure to talk to them and to encourage them to find, discover, work with. And your parents are okay, you know, we're old. We've been there, done that. to like them later on in life. And, but that's what kept me here, was working with the students and talking to them and seeing their excitement and their, excitement not only here, but hoping, what they would do later on in life, and I've kept in touch with some of them. And so that's the enjoyment in the story. There's no one special story. There's just a lot of good, warm feelings of working here at the Y with the staff and the students and the excitement and the warmth that everybody has for everybody. Next.
I just have something to add that sparked from what you said, Betty, and it's thinking about like the excitement. One of the most unique things that I find about the Y is that you get to interact with all different walks of life, different people, different passions, with different ideas. And from being a student and being on the student board and learning from organizations and those representatives of the organizations, that maybe we have a different theme or passion or idea or social action that we're working on, but we can learn from each other in the ways to effectively get our passions and see those to fruition. So that was really something that I was excited about. Another thing too is you as a student all the way through working with committees and boards at the Y, is that you get to work with people that are just have so much different skill sets, passions, ideas, and we come together under the house of the Y to get work done and to see action happen, whether it be on our university and our campus. I think that's one of the most unique things as a student, being able to work with Becca on the donor development committee. I was a part of your committee.
Yes.
Helped me learn and start my own nonprofit and think about fundraising and how to do these things. So thank you, Becca. But all the way to working with the board of directors and learning about different global environmental initiatives that are happening and how can we take what we do here locally and think globally and contribute to those efforts. There's just so many different pathways, and the Y is unique in the ways that you can focus on your own passion, but you can also contribute to the greater whole. And there's opportunities and a seat at the table for everybody, which is what I really think is special about the Y too, and sparked a thought that you had, something that you had said.
That actually sparked something for me really quickly. And I apologize, but I had to sneak out a little early. I just, in thinking about Cassie, I had the best job here because I got to talk to our donors about why they support our work. And it was just always so heartwarming. And I said this last night. We had a gathering over in Murphy with our Heritage Circle, who are individuals who have considered the Y's future long-term by either making a gift to the Y's endowment or leaving the Y in their estate with a bequest gift. And I thanked them and said, the notion of giving a gift with that level of trust in an organization's future. So for many of these gifts, the donors will never see it realized, and the donors themselves, they won't see what happens after the gift comes to the Y. There's such a deep trust and a belief that the work will continue. And so I think that is a magnifying point in this organization, that level of trust and support and hope for the future. I remember many nights leaving here after working with the students and going home and thinking our future is bright because we have just such wonderful, committed young men and women who are developing in this building, and our future is so bright, and I still feel that way.
We've talked about that 150-year history, and today is the birthday, the actual birthday. Other years we've had things on Founders Day, but this is a very special Founders Day. You hear the word sesquicentennial. Maybe it's a farm, because our family farm became a sesquicentennial farm. But this is a huge number, and you can see that as Scott wrote the book, he divided it into 3 eras, so-called. The early, middle, and recent, as he put it then. But that's 25 years ago, Scott. So I'm suggesting that we, and of course, each era was about 40 years to get to the 125-year anniversary that we were celebrating. Now there's been another 25, and the challenge that all of us here, and especially you younger people, have here is what's the next period? Is it another 25-year period? I've actually seen that go by now. It didn't take too long. And maybe it's not, maybe it's more, but maybe it's less. I mean, lots of strategic planning is done 3 to 5 years at a time. What's the right time? It's not just a question of the number of years. What is it that you think ought to change? What do you think you ought to get done before you leave here, in whatever capacity you are? And then help us all to work together. How do we develop and define and implement that kind of idea? What's next? Given all this history, what should we be doing? What can we be doing? And that's the question. And of course, Mike he had half of this last 25 years, and he knows how that can be moving forward. Here.
Thanks for that, John. To me, it's up to the students. I think that's where it comes from. It's very organic in the sense that students care and they know what the issues are, they know what they want to see done. And we're just a vehicle, to sort of embody that and allow it to happen and ferment and grow. I love the concept of pollination, where people go and they just start talking to each other. Like Scott said, it's 2 people talking that leads to an action. And sort of connecting people's ideas and bringing people together. So I think the future is bright, but where it goes is really not for the old people to decide. Yeah, there's a hand in the back.
I'm going to stand up because I can see you over here and way over here. Going back to before the time Scott was here, and John, and others, the mission of the Y will always be here. The university is a series of pillars. They're called departments, isolated pillars, and the Y brings together people from different disciplines. Secondly, the university focuses on science and social science. These, of course, come from economics, for example. How does the economy work? It doesn't, and we analyze whether it works well or not so well. And when you get into policy, there's an ethical dimension. There's an ethical dimension to every single science. And the Y's mission, the mission of this Friday Forum, has been basically to explore the new ideas, the new in science, and we get specialists from all different fields, and then look at the ethical dimension. What is right? What is wrong? What maybe should be done? The Y still is doing that, and this is a very important, very basic mission. The students involved, I see, are very concerned with, making society better, making the world a better place when we leave it than it was when we first came. And I think that's a uniting element in our mission. I'd just like to mention one other very brief little thing, going back to before Scott and John and others. Fred Miller was the General Secretary. We had a very large National World Issues Forum. It was in Quad, in the auditorium. We drew thousands of students to that. It was John Cribbett, Robin Fleming, that brought Fred Miller in those days. But then there was another thing that happened very soon. The Y was mostly all men. The board, the student cabinet, and the YW was over in Copa Hall, And they had a very large dormitory, and they didn't want to be just a dormitory manager, and we were exploring, could they perhaps come over here and join us? And so we discussed this in the board. I was very much in favor of doing this. And the student cabinet, I talked to them. We called it the cabinet in those days, not the student board, but the student cabinet. And the fellows that were on the student cabinet were strongly in favor of encouraging the YW to come over. So they were then in Murphy Lounge when they first came. And then gradually, more and more young women came into the Y. The room is now, half a minute at least. It's getting bigger and breadth and intelligence, women in all different disciplines. And I think the Y is the richer for it. We have not just the YW joining, coming over into the building, but the young women and women of all ages coming into the Y and enriching its future.
Thanks for filling us in on those pieces, Walt. Those are important pieces of our history, too. Is there maybe one more comment or story to share? Jim, okay? And then we've got a wrap-up planned. Okay, this will be kind of cute.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, one quick story that I will never forget. When I was a student here in the early 70s, some of us organized a group called the Center for Nonviolent Social Change. And we worked a lot on organizing anti-war protests. And at the height of that, right after Kent State happened and students were killed at Kent State, there was a rally organized on the quad the day after that. It was estimated there were approximately 10,000 students on the quad for that rally. Father Mike Reel spoke, who was also on our Board of Governors, and then the National Guard began surrounding the quad, and a number of us retreated to the Y and spent the night here. And that's something I'll never forget. But the Y was very supportive of all that, so that's the point.
Deb was just saying she had not heard that story, and I hadn't either. Thank you for sharing that story.
You're going to kick it off.
Okay, so one last announcement before we do this. We did not thank Urbana Public Television, and I want to really thank Urbana Public Television for being here this week. They're here week after week after week. They do a really good job. And if you know of someone who wanted to be here today and was not able to be, we'll make those recordings available. So thank you to Urbana Public Television. We really appreciate you guys. Okay, so I like hokey things, and I'm excited about birthdays. I know not everybody's super excited about their birthday. Mike, you were never very excited about your birthday, but I really like birthdays. So I think we should sing happy birthday to the University of YMCA. Okay. No, I'm not the voice. Jim.
All right, I'm a terrible singer, so you all are going to have to help me out here. Ready? We're going to sing to the University Y. That's what it is, right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, University Y. Happy birthday to you. Wonderful. So now we've sung and tortured it enough. Let's give a round of applause and recognize our panelists and Scott. Thank you for sharing so much. There will be so much more happening during this year. If you want to put a pin in your calendar, put it in for September 30th and October 1st. We will be doing a live family reunion / homecoming here on campus. We're still working through that process. If you are so moved as to want to be part of, and your life journey has been touched by the Y, and you want to be part of that work, let any of the staff know. We'll get you connected to that. Those who are former and current staff, we're going to gather here in a minute, but certainly if you're not a staff member and like to hang around and chat with some of the people here that are familiar faces or people you'd like to get to know better, we invite you to do so. We hope you'll come back each week for Friday Forum the rest of this series. It's always a great gathering. The topics are always interesting, and we would like to thank the Y Eatery for making lunch available to us. Have a great rest of the day.